Hello and welcome to another of our weekly JKA Kata seminars. Tonight's Kata is Heian Sandan. For all the Heian series of katas, it means peace or peaceful mind. So assumedly, if you learn all these katas well, you can have a peace of mind that you will be safe from most attackers. Heian Sandan and all the Heian katas were invented by Sensei Itosu, one of Funakoshi's main instructors, and they were created to make more easy kata for beginners. Heian Sandan is not quite as intricate as Heian Nidan, but I think that it's more difficult. In other words, to do it right, your technique has to be a little more advanced. The things that are unique to Heian Sandan, the introduction of horseback riding stance, kibadachi. The signature move in Heian Sandan is the transfer from different stances, from back stance to front stance to kibadachi stance, back to front stance. It also introduces yoriashi, or shifting. Okay, so before I start the kata in particular, I just want to make a few remarks about kibadachi stance. So kibadachi stance is really important to master, to go on to more advanced forms in karate. It was so important that in the old days, before the Heian kata were even invented, typically students, the most basic kata were the teki kata, which only have kibadachi stance. And typically the teachers would make their students do teki for at least a year before they graduated to more advanced kata. There are many elements to kibadachi that apply to all the other stances, but we'll use this as an example in what beginners do and what you have to learn to do. So, equal distribution of weight. Make sure your hip is under. This is what locks your torso to your stance. Important thing is your feet are turned, the outside edges of your feet are parallel. Okay, now most beginners have trouble doing this. Their feet usually splay out to some degree or another. Some of this is a lack of flexibility, but most of it is not that. Most of it is that their bodies don't understand the dynamic tension necessary to make the stance, or any stance. So we characterize kibadachi stance as a pressure outward stance on the knees. But this is too simple, because any stance that has pressure in any direction also has pressure in the opposite direction to lock it into place. So this action of pushing out, most beginners are just making their stance. They're just bending their knees and kind of, oh, that's the shape. But they're not making the dynamic tension. So when the feet are splayed out, what's missing is the groin muscles pulling inward, strongly squeezing inward. This holds the toes in. If inside is not strongly squeezing, as soon as you move, the feet will kind of just fall outward. So this is the missing element, and the one that takes the longest for people to master is that inside tension in the stance. So when you have this outside tension pushing out, inside tension, the stance becomes locked. An exercise that I sometimes advise to my students to check your stances is go out in the winter on glazed ice and make your stances. Make your stances. If your foot slips out, that's because there's not enough inward pull. That your stance should stay still, even if you're on glazed ice. But too many people just bend the knees and they're relying on the friction of the floor to hold them in place. But when there's no friction, out goes the stance. So, you try it yourself. Next winter, try to do your stances on ice and see how you do. Okay, so as we always do before I get into the analysis, We'll do the kata together by count, half speed, and then we'll get on with it. Hey, ready? Heian Sandan. Yoi. I, ni, san, chi, go, lo, shich, hats, ko, jo, ai, ni, san, chi, go, look, shich, hats, cool. Each. Yummy. Okay, first movement. Inside forearm block, uchi-uke, and the kokutsudachi stance, back stance. The important thing about Heian 2 through 5 is that your weight must go straight down and not move to the side as you make the first movements. Since each one of these katas starts the same way, I have to believe this is really important to Sensei Itosu to nail into the students' heads that the position that your body needs to be in back stance. 70% of the weight, 30% of the weight. Not more 60-40 or 50-50, or back farther. So from here, check a mirror, make sure you go straight down. Back heel pivots on the heel. Okay. Uchi-uke chudan. Next movement. Uchi-uke and geidan-uke together. Then again. Okay. First, so this kozadachi, first thing, and this is something that the black belts have to understand and experiment with. In this position, your knees are not, don't completely lock your knees this way, okay? You're a little bit bend the knees, and you're squeezing your thighs and your knees together. And of course, hip is pushed under. You have to find this strong position. If you go back and forth between bent knees and straight knees and bent knees, little bent, you'll find that when you straighten knees all the way, that your weight goes back onto the heels. That means that you're not very stable to the front, as you are a little bit bent. But if you bend a lot, you again won't be very stable to the front. So you have to find that little bit bent position where you're most stable. And the best way to do this is have somebody pushing on your hips. And try it. Try here, try here, try here, try here, try here. Where am I most stable? And that's probably the right position. Okay, these two Morote Uke blocks done together are, well, first let's talk about execution. Too many, but this is the first time that these blocks have been done in the Kata series in kozadachi stance. Usually, we do down block or inside block from front stance. Now what happens is that most beginners, when they're learning where to put this front hand, they're keying on the leg to kind of get an idea how far away from the body should the block be. But when they stand up, they bring the hand in too close. Okay? So instead, lock the armpit down, stand up, and you'll find that your eye makes it seem like it's farther from your body than this position. But it's the same position. What's the same is the block under the armpit. So both these are the elbows in the same position. Okay. So that's one element. Make sure that you're not too far or too close to the body. There's that perfect, strongest position that you have to learn where it is. Second element, make sure the elbows stay at finish time along this line, parallel to the body and just outside the body line. Third one is, especially beginners, so many people make these into, looks like the toy wooden drummer boy. And the arms just going like this, both of them. But that down block doesn't start from here, and inside block doesn't start from here. Down block starts from here, and inside block starts from here. So emphasize to your students and to yourself that you have to bring these to the correct position, and then out again, to the correct position, and then out again. The arms actually come in, then away from the body. In, the fists, away from the body. In, and away from the body. So, to get the feeling, all right, am I doing this right, anywhere near right? Each of these blocks has two vectors. One is sideways, and the other one is, because it starts in, is forward. So make sure, find a hitting dummy, make sure that you are hitting from the side, boom. But also make sure that you have you can forward strike the heavy bag. Okay, down block 2. Make sure you're hitting to the side. So hit the side of the heavy bag, but then also make sure that you can strike forward low into the bag. So the techniques that are doing both of these vectors, either you will hit the side if you aim to the side, or you hit the front of the bag if you're in a position to do that. Both these must be true to do the block correctly. Okay, boom time. These are a little weird. Of course, whenever we do a double block like this, either one of these, I mean, there's all kinds of weird, it could mean this, it could mean that, but either one of these could mean you're blocking one technique and the other one is just ready. This is not likely to be, if somebody did Yamazuki, mountain punch, possibly you could block it that way. Possible. So that's one idea, but not too many people do mountain punch. So you can think of chudan attack, inside block, low attack, down block. Either one of these can also mean that you're blocking and blocking a punch and punching inward at the same time to the opponent. Blocking something and punching inward low at the same time. Okay? The way I like to think about it, and it helps to do the technique right, is after here, think about the opponent just punched with the right lunge punch, with the right hand, so you're pushing him out that way. Now he comes with the left hand reverse punch. So you step into the opponent, block the reverse punch, and hit him in the jaw with your fist. Chudan, step into the opponent. You have to practice with a partner to see what I mean. But this one, okay, can be a strike. Okay. Or chudan, you're blocking a chudan punch, and the opponent punches to chudan again, and you block the chudan and strike him with the other arm. Or, it can mean any of these kinds of things. Now, why would we ever want to do this? I think I explained this in Heian. Why would we want to move so far? Why would we ever want to move so far into an opponent and then make that ridiculously weak stance, which isn't that weak if you do it properly, but weaker than normal rooted stance or something. The reason is, one scenario, this opponent, you just block this opponent, you detect this one's coming at you from behind, and you move away from this opponent. And then you have room to go after this opponent, okay, and the next set of techniques. So always kata, the strange maneuvers where you say, why would I do that? Usually you have to do a positioning. Circumstance, the bunkai, the circumstance, but positioning, because you have 4 opponents. You don't just have one opponent. If you had one opponent, you stay away from it. The farther I stay away from one opponent, the closer I get to another. So sometimes you have to go in. Okay, so we have this one, then the other side, mirror image. Okay, next, Murote Uke, augmented block, which we saw in Heian Nidan. I described in Heian Nidan that my preference for blocking is to bring the arm to the augmenting fist and bring them together as opposed to separate. Bring the arm in together. Okay. So, and this is still good, I think, to teach the beginners, because you want them to have good form. So standing like this, next movement is that direction. So bring your hand back, and you make a nice big Murote Uke. But black belts must make the kata more real. Once they've learned the basics, they have to more go directly to the next movement. So in this case, from this position, this hand is already back far enough. It can just do that. The opponent's coming, boom, boom. You have to block quickly. So that means this one has to just catch up. Okay, that's to make a more realistic bunkai, a more realistic kumite feeling. Okay, teaching basics, encourage a big movement. Black belts, once you understand the basics, start to make a more real movement. Murote Uke, I said in Heian Nidan, your little finger of the right hand in this case was right in that little cupped out spot just above the elbow of the blocking arm, and so your wrist does not bend. So the wrist is straight, and that's what part contacts the blocking arm. And the right elbow is squeezed into your ribs so that everything becomes a unit. This allows you to block a more massive punch. It also allows you to use this kind of technique, instead of just blocking a punch, to actually, and you can try this with heavy bag. Try just blocking the heavy bag, and then go like that into the heavy bag. Boom! You should be able to make a big crash with it. So what this is good for is actually slamming into an opponent, hitting his body to whack him out of the way. Again, so you create a position. If another opponent's coming from behind, you've got to go by one opponent to keep him off your back. That's one use for this Murote Uke. Okay, next movement. Tate, nukite, spear hand, vertical spear hand strike, and osai uke, open palm. Okay. Position for this one, hip is square. It's here. Okay. This one is pushing. The elbow acts as a pivot. It's not pushing downward, it's pushing a little off to the side. It's punched a little bit so it misses you. So, like this. And so if you practice this, you'll see that this is not in the center. This is a little bit off to the side where your arms come in contact. And the back of your left hand is under your right elbow. What I said for Heian remains true for all of this kind of technique. From here, you cannot go 1, 2. You cannot make the block and then the counter. The purpose for this is this is the sen-no-sen timing. Go-no-sen means block, counter. Sen-no-sen means block, counter at the same time. It surprises the opponent. 1. So as you push his arm down, you hit him at the same time. So people are doing this. If you do this to an opponent, the only thing that's going to happen is 1, 2, and he's just going to hit you in the same timing. 1, 2. Why? He can butt 1, 2. But if you go 1, you don't have time to make a second technique. So sen-no-sen timing, you have to incorporate into the kata. Make it realistic. Next technique. Turn sideways for this. Opponent's grabbing your wrist, so you turn the hand over and you start to turn your back on the opponent. Turn from behind and make Kensui-uchi bottom fist strike. Okay. If anybody's twisting, they're trying to twist your arm behind your back, you cannot resist. Once you get to about this position, you cannot fight it. Your joints aren't strong enough. But you can go so the opponent's turning and pulling on you. You can go with the motion and hit the opponent as you turn into it. At that point, that you strike the opponent, you release his grip at the same time you strike the opponent, pull the grip away. In practice, in reality, it may very well be that you are here and the opponent goes, what? And he's got you. So you can still turn and strike him, but we don't want to get here if we can help it. So a strong position, if somebody has your wrist for this, is about here. Okay? So that's where your hand comes. Okay? Do it facing the other way. About here. And that's where your hand comes in the execution of this technique in the kata. Kensui-uchi, then Oizuki, lunge, punch, kiai. Okay. So this is that sequence that I was talking about. The beginners have trouble going from, it's hard, having not been mastered these stances, back stance, front stance, hibirachi stance, front stance. These 4 movements are very important for an examiner watching the student to say, he has the idea, or no, he doesn't have the idea yet because you have to, you're not in the same stance all the time, so you have to understand how to transfer from one stance to the other. Wait, lunge, punch. Last word on that series. You have to try to make your stances not too wide. You're trying to chase your opponent down a line. So don't start making really wide front stances, because you'll end up way over off your line, and there's no place in the kata to make that up. So what you want to do is try to stay in tight to this line. Make kind of narrow, this one you don't have to worry about. Make kind of narrow front stances so you don't go more than like this far to the right of that line through those 4 techniques. Then you should have no trouble getting on your mark, but also it's more realistic. The opponent is there. He's not going that way, which is how a wide front stances would take you over there somewhere. He's going that way. He's pulling you that way. you're striking him that way. So you need to go more straight line. Okay, we are here. Next one. Okay, this position, in the book it says this is kamae. Okay, again, a little bit, squeeze the, don't completely straighten the knees, a little, just a little. And the knees, and squeeze your knees together, and the elbows to here. So it says it's kamae, which means you're getting ready. So in this case, this is one of those kata that, and this is the first instance of this in Heian kata, where you're standing up and you're just looking at this opponent going, look here, this is totally open. I want you to attack here. And sure enough, next technique he does. So you're baiting the opponent to attack where you're open. That's one meaning. But another bunkai is that as you make the turn, here facing this opponent, all of a sudden somebody grabs your arms together around your shoulders. Okay? So I'll face this way. Somebody's grabbing around your shoulders, right? Like this. So as you turn. So this one, you come up. Bunkai, as you come up like this, using not this motion so much, because that's a relatively weak motion, but your straightening of the knees. Okay? So although the kata is executed, where you just bring your hands naturally to here. Understanding that other bunkai, you have to make sure that you're waiting to straighten the knees till the end of the movement. So if someone you do have a monkey on your back, okay, and you come to here. And you have to practice with a partner, or, well, yeah, both play the attacker and defender. Your arms must be on the center line. So regardless of this, just kamae, don't bring your elbows back. Because if your elbows are back, one, there's no meaning at all. This action, in this position, you can hold a lot of weight. Your index finger is on just below your hip bone. If somebody's hanging on your arms, on this part of your arms, you can hold them up easily. You're not using any muscle power. This straight arm here, this straight arm here, just acts as a lock and keeps them like that. Okay. If your elbows are back and somebody grabs around you, you'll just collapse. So you have to experiment with that to know what I'm talking about. But regardless, the next movement requires the elbows be forward anyway. So even if you say kamae, then please have your elbows centered, not the back. Okay, next movement. Kibirachi, stomp to the floor. This is called furiempi, swinging the elbow. Uchi, uke, as a block. Okay, using it as a block. Can be a strike also, then it would be uchi. It's important, elements are that when you bring the knee up, you got to drop the center of gravity and come down quickly. People that go 1, 2 are not using realistic timing. Instead, the knee's got to come up quick and come down quick. Okay. The arms haven't changed position. In order to block attack coming from this direction, you only have to bring the elbow in a little bit. But important thing here is don't swing the body. Your shoulders have to stay even with the hip. You're using a hip twist to make the power in the block. As soon as you swing your body off this line, your shoulders off this line, you actually lose connection. You will lose power. We have somebody hanging on our back. We have somebody coming toward us from the front. So we simultaneously block this opponent. But what happens to him? Well, what happens to him is if you come like this, and now he's got you around here and here, if he's still hanging on tight, when you twist your hip strong like that, that will throw him off of you. If you get a good, develop good hip twist, it will throw him off of you. In fact, if he's not ready for that, it can send the person flying if you have a good sharp hip twist. But if when you go like this, his arms flop up in the air so he doesn't have a hold on you anymore, but he's still right next to you. When you twist in this direction, and you're blocking this opponent with this elbow bump, comes into that opponent's ribs. Okay? And you can practice with an opponent. You'll see how, hold on tight and see how you can throw them. Just do this and see how when you turn your body, this elbow rotates into the opponent's solar plexus area. And that hurts. So, Fumikomi, can you stomp on the opponent's foot, block the punch. Next technique is Tate Uraken, vertical back fist strike. Target is Jinshu, above the upper lip. Let's go with mistakes that beginners make. First, almost all of them, almost all beginners will start the turn of the hip too early. So, but Fumikomi is no different stomping to the floor than side thrust kick going outward. Side thrust kick starts with the knee forward. And then the hip twist at the end of the move. Fumikomi starts with the knee forward. Then the hip twist at the end of the move. So there's two exercises that you can do, and your beginners can do to try to get this move more correct. First one is do this in 2 counts. 1, 2, no, don't turn yet. 1, 2, turn at the end. Okay? 1, 2, turn at the end. And then you can take it even further by doing it very, very slowly. But 1, obviously you're not going to be stomping the floor now, but bring the foot down, keep your weight way down on the supporting leg, touch the toes of the foot that's coming down, and only when they touch, then turn the hip. 1 to center, bring it down straight, touch the toes, only when they touch, then turn the hip. The last moment, turn the hip. So beginners don't do that, but that's what you have to encourage them to do. Second thing that people often do, and you need to practice with an opponent to understand. You cannot go, this is a vertical back fist strike, 1. So if you go at a diagonal, which is a common mistake, coming like this into the face, when you hit, if you hit obliquely, you're going to injure the opponent, you're going to piss him off, but you're not going to knock him out. You want to come directly, palm, into here. Okay? So to do that, you have to come up quickly with the fist close to the body, come to vertical and come to here. Don't bring your fist out this way, because if the opponent's punching and you just blocked like this, if you come out here, you're not going to clear the arm to make the counter. You have to come inside the opponent's arm, inside his arm. And depending on how close their arm is to your body, you might have to bring it back more in application to make this technique. Now, when I first learned this technique, Mori Sensei taught it to do it that way. Bring it back and go And that's explicitly, the understanding is that the opponent's arm is right here and you can't get inside of it. So you come this way inside of his arm first. And it works, but it takes more time. So if you can whack the arm out away from you a little bit, there's a little bit of space you can get through with this one. But make sure you make vertical strike. How to ensure you're making the vertical strike? Get the heavy bag and practice. You have to hit a vertical surface strongly. A lot of people are doing this. And it's going downward. Well, downward is not going to hit anybody. You got to go inward. Now, going inward has a lot to do with the position of the elbow. The elbow is very much like outside forearm block, but a little bit higher. Okay, with the same bend, 90-degree bend. Why? Why aren't we doing this? For two reasons. One, this is a weird position for your arm, for your shoulder to make. So you can practice from this position where you're close to the body. Start to straighten the elbow more and more. What you're going to feel is your shoulders coming in. And if you straighten all the way, there's no way you can keep your shoulder down. This is like a submission hold. An opponent break. This is the position that an opponent will break your elbow in. Okay. So instead, you got to keep your elbow close to the body. So why so close? Because if you were blocking with your arm, the opponent would be far away. But because you're blocking with your elbow, probably at about his elbow joint, the opponent's right here. He's right next to you. He's not over there. He's right next to you. That's why we're using this strike. Okay. The last element of this, to make sure you're doing it correctly, again, it has everything to do with the elbow position. You can easily snap this technique if you come to this correct elbow position. It is 1, 2. When you snap back, the elbow is in the correct position, doesn't move from here. 1, 2. 1, 2. You will find that if your elbow extends upward a little bit, it's awkward. People are doing awkward things. But if you get it to the right position, here, this position, it will snap back very effortlessly. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3. Next. Tate shuto oke, oizuki, vertical knife hand block, oizuki. We used to do this, well, I learned it, to do this slowly, and then go. And it was 2 counts. But now, they want 1 count, and not only that, this one is done in transition. It's not done from kibidachi. It's done as you're stepping forward. Okay. So this is making this new timing is good. It's making the kata more like fighting, real self-defense situation. Okay, now we're here. Next, kibidachi, agezuki. Punching upward and elbow behind. Important point with this one is you want to go on a little bit of an arc to about here before you make the twist to here. The reason being, and not too much because you'll give up too much speed. The reason being that if you just step here and pivot, you're going to have too much spin when you try to land the stance, the next stance. If you bring If you bring this foot a little bit, the end of this motion a little bit to the right, now you've already started the motion going that way. Which means you can catch your balance and make focus a lot easier. Then from here, we go here, and then Yoriashi, shift the stance, and kick. Okay. These two, the meaning of this technique is somebody's grabbing from behind, again across your shoulders, or maybe across, like trying to get your around your neck, maybe. You have to drop your weight, okay, to get out of this. Now, back further in the kata, we rose our weight to punch his arms up in the air. Now, we're dropping our weight to escape from this same kind of grabbing motion. So, two ways to skin the cat. If we were just static, standing there and somebody grabbed us from behind, this action would be moving to the side a little and hitting to low with the elbow and to the face high. Okay? The reason this one doesn't have to go very far is if somebody's like grabbing onto you, they're usually squeezing you up against their body, which means their face can very easily be right there, right here. Okay? If they were farther back, you'd probably go for the eyes or something. Pick a different technique. If you can feel that their head is kind of hanging on your shoulder, then you come up to Jinshu. Or this way. And with this counter. But either way, if you connect with one or the other, you're probably going to escape the hold. In the kata, we move obliquely, okay? And then we shift toward the opponent. This can work, wouldn't be as common, but this would work if there was an opponent over here. And he's like grab me from this side and pulling me, like diagonally me that way. He's like pulling me. I can move into the opponent and make this technique. Okay, same thing, somebody's over there, he grabs this arm. He's like pulling me that way. So I move into that opponent, just like the kata. So if you want to think, well, how do you do a bunkai application just like the kata, then it would be somebody pulling you from obliquely at an angle. If somebody just grabs you from behind you, just then go the opposite direction, shift the opposite direction. So that ends tonight's seminar for Heian Sandan. And next week we will move on to Heian Yondan, number 4. And until then, train hard and train smart. See you then.